didn't care if he broke his neck. He'd run people.
Sheldon Kennedy, it's 1-0.
It was worth the price of admission every night because he's reckless abandon. Hardest hitter up rugby I've ever seen. Partying the whole time.
I lived fast and dangerous. I was portrayed as this out of control, drunk kid.
I'm thinking, what the hell are you doing, Sheldon? You know, like, why are you screwing this up?
There's something wrong with me. Yeah, and there was. I had to protect the secret. We only had 150 people that lived in our town, so we'd go play hockey. It was just a way of life.
Sorrow found me when I was young.
Graham James started scouting us after we attended a hockey school of his.
Sorrow waited.
He was a scout and a coach, so we were taken with how he was interested in the boys.
I remember going back to his apartment and I heard Graham crawling around the room, so I'm thinking, okay, this is weird. And then all of a sudden, he started touching my feet. My life changed from that point on.
A hockey coach in Canada is now in jail after admitting that he molested 2 of his teenage players.
In a small town, winning's everything. Like, they'll win at all costs. They don't care.
Hockey didn't want to hear it.
They did not want to see a sexual assault scandal in this game.
For Sheldon, I think it is not so much a question of courage as it is survival.
All of a sudden, I'm getting awards and standing ovations. I still wanted to numb out. Talk about living that double life. I still have a lot more healing to do.
He spent time in his basement with a shotgun and a bunch of coke.
We all thought he was going to die. Damage that's done to a brain. There was a lot.
It's not my dream that I'm best known for. It's my nightmare. I knew who I could be if I could only get out of this.
I could feel that it was wrong. This is not what happens between a dad and a daughter.
The way you feel is normal for what happened to you. Well, what happens when this happens to kids and they have nothing? I know where it ends up. They end up dead. Our kids are telling. We're not acting.
You're on. So that was a lot to process. I don't know if you were like me. I'm thinking about my friends and my family and all the potential people who could be impacted by something like that. And for me, Sheldon, the first question I want to ask is, how do we create environments for people within our communities so that they can feel comfortable coming forward and speaking out and being confident that they're not alone and they can really voice their opinions and their feelings when stuff like that does happen?
Yeah. Sure. Well, geez, I was on a vacation before I came here, so I was sitting watching the movie. I'm going, holy cow! I gotta get back in here again, get in the game again here. But like, I think if we look at that film, or we read of any of the stories that are going on, whether it's the Larry Nassar stuff in the States, or it's the UK soccer cases, or whatever, right? What is the backstory that we always hear, right? People knew. People had a gut feeling that something was going on, and people knew. So what we know is that, and what I think and what we believe, is that our best defense is knowledge. People don't speak up because they don't know, right? They don't know what to say. They don't know what to ask. They're not sure if it is or if it isn't. And I think when we look at society's perception, right, of a criminal or a bad person, they wear masks, they lurk around at night, they jump out from behind corners, and they usually have a weapon. And in these cases, it's the exact opposite of that. It's a betrayal of trust and manipulation, not only on the kids, but also on the systems, the organizations, and those that run it. And, you know, so I believe and you know, that our best defense is to create a confidence to really understand and focus on the good people. I think for a long time we never focus on the good people in the organization and give them the tools to be better. Because if I look at like whether it's Mickey, Graham, or myself, like it's not just us three. I mean, we've done 7,000 investigations in Calgary alone. We might get 10% of only like the severe stuff. But you know, what about those other kids that come from, you know, dysfunctional homes or that are struggling? And the safest place for them is the pitch, is the soccer field, or wherever it is, school, right? You may be the only trusted adult, and I've said this before, you may be the only trusted adult in their life, right? And that's the reality, because the majority of these investigations that we do, those kids know they're abusers, or it's happening at home. 50% of them are happening at home. So when I look at, you know, an organization, right? We need to learn. We need to learn so that we can have those conversations.
I remember at your keynote speech last year, you saying something to the effect of, stranger danger, throw that out the window. It's the people in our communities that are the ones that are doing this. I think that more than anything was shocking to the people who were there last year and the people who are here today. How do you identify that sort of stuff? What are the warning signs that you would see in a player or in a referee in those communities that would be giving off those types of sort of markers, things that you could identify that might be a reason to reach out and say, hey, can I have a word?
Yeah, well, I think with kids, like sudden change in behavior, right? We know the first thing that, you know, that happens with kids when they're being hurt and in all different types of ways, but they want to stop sport, they want to quit, they want to drop out, and that's what happens. And we know that, right? The first thing that leaves is their willingness to want to play and be a kid. You know, you look at self-harming behavior, right? You look at outbursts of anger. I mean, there's lots of signs. There's a good video that we put together on our website. It's 30 minutes long. It's made for teachers. But it's a video that's from health, child and family, police, and schools. And it basically talks about what to do, what to look for and what to do. It's free. It's on Sheldon Kennedy Child Advocacy Center, CAC website. But I think as a coach, if you're paying attention, if people ask me, and I go back to this all the time with my daughter, Ryan, like, you know, I think our conversations don't have to be perfect. They need to be honest. And I think that that's important, right? With my conversations with my daughter, like I know that she knows that I know, right? So she can come to me with whatever it may be that she might be struggling with. This is not just about sexual abuse. And I think that, you know, I was scared. I mean, I'm doing this stuff and I was scared to talk to my daughter, right? But to me, that's the job of a parent. That's our job. And, you know, and I look at this story, Sheldon's story, Larry Nassar's story. There's stories every day. Use those to have the conversation, right? Use those to have the conversation. And I think I've learned over the years that this stuff is not about perfect, right? These conversations are not about perfect. They're about honest. And we don't have to have the answers, right? We just need to show up. And that's the key. Right? But if we look at coach-athlete, we talk about trust and being able to get the trust. Well, we look at some of these kids that are coming in. I mean, that's the thing that's gone from them, right, is trust, right? So I think it's even more important to make sure that we keep showing up for them. Just keep being there for them, right? Not probe for answers and always talk about what's wrong, because they've probably had that their whole life. Why aren't you passing this test? What's wrong here? Right? Just be there for them and encourage them and create that safe place for them, because I think most kids don't feel safe. And I think that's going to keep them coming back.
You mentioned that conversation, of course. As we mentioned off the top, if you have questions, our staff is around. You can submit them through paper or online using the hashtag hashtag #PlayInspireUnite, and we have one already. So let's just jump right into this then. It seems to me they're asking that the sentencing for pedophiles is extremely light. What does that say to the victims?
Well, I mean, we go to courts with the victims and so forth, and I think that the sentencing light, because there's such a lack of understanding of the impact of the crime, and they are slowly getting higher and higher, and there was a few things that have been changed. Time and totality. I mean, if you look at the Graham James case, I mean, you know, it was if he, all the crimes that were clumped in a certain amount of time, they'd be looked at as one crime, right? So he was getting basically sentenced. So most of his victims so far have been all within basically a three-year period. So basically that's clumped together and looked at as one offense, and he'd get sentenced to one offense. So time and totality in today's has been taken away. So if he's abused 5 kids, and you know, he's going to get charged for 5 kids, right? Not just 1 kid. So there are things, but what we know and what we're going to court for is the knowledge and the lack of impact. And I talked about this last year, but this is what we know. We know that kids that have been abused are 30% higher dropout rates in high school, 59 times more likely to be arrested as juvenile, right? Over 70% of mental health issues in this country and around the world stem from adverse childhood experiences, right? Kids that have been abused are 15 times more likely to attempt suicide. I mean, the list goes on, right? The list goes on. So the reality is the impact is significant. And we've spent a lot of time educating judges on the impact of these crimes so that we can sentence appropriately. And, you know, and what we know is that the therapy that it takes for a kid to get over this or to try to get their life back is more than 1 or 2 counseling sessions. So even if you look at the perpetrator, if they want to get their life back or want to try to get back into society, it's got to take a commitment and a daily commitment. And, you know, that is not going to be 18 months, and it's voluntary if they want to show up at counseling sessions. Right? It has to be a commitment. And so, you know, I think we're getting there. We've come a long ways in that area, but I think that sometimes we put a lot of false hope on the court process. And I always tell the kids and the families, if you tell your story, you've done your part. Now it's out of your hands. Your job is to make yourself better. Right? We can't rely on the justice piece of it it's like winning the lotto. If we got baggage and win the lotto, the winning the lotto ain't going to take away our baggage. Right? We got to have to do the work. So
it's hard not to watch that film and conclude that we don't need to be training all of our stakeholders, coaches, match officials, administrators. Everyone in Ontario soccer should be watching that film and being at least a little bit concerned that even 1 kid in our communities that this could be happening to. Are we doing enough to train our coaches and our mentors and our match officials and our administrators to make sure that this type of thing never happens to anyone in our communities?
Yeah, and I think, you know, obviously the sexual abuse stuff is like, you know, is the extreme, and it's a very blatant, you know, sexual abuse is one of those ones that we can kind of get our heads around that are bad. But I think there's a whole pile of other subtle emotional abuses and so forth that are just as impactful for kids, especially if kids are already coming there to find a safe place. And I think that if we look at an organization, it's not just our coaches' responsibility, right? It has to be our coaches, it has to be our parents, it has to be all the adults that are there to help create this space that we want to create, right? But I think we always sometimes want to point the picture, and I think, or point the finger at, oh, it's their job, or it's their job, or it's their job, or they didn't do this, or they didn't do that. And I think what I know about these issues, it's about accountability, right? It's about accountability. And I think, you know, the more we understand these issues, the less we're going to be scared, and the less that people are going to feel that they can operate within our systems. I mean, the Graham Jameses of the world, the Larry Nassers of the world, and all those stories, they operate within our systems and organizations because of our ignorance and indifference. Lock, stop, and barrel, right? That's how they get away with it. How many people have a gut feeling? I mean, Graham James for 20 years. I can't tell you. I still get people that come up and say, well, geez, something wasn't right, right? How do we equip those people with the knowledge and the tools and the confidence to say, hey, if something's not right, I'm allowed to ask questions, right?
Was it difficult, or is it difficult? Because obviously you do screenings like this fairly regularly. Is it difficult to watch that, and was it difficult to make this film? What made you decide to want to make Swift Current as a film, as a documentary?
Well, I don't know, difficult. You know what? I think making the film, like where I felt we were lacking in this area was the impact, and I think the film did a good job of focusing on the impact. Right? I think for a long time it's focused on the incident, right? Like it's really focused on it's
about the issues.
Yeah, and it's perpetrator focused, and I think that we wanted to focus on the impact, and we felt that if we invested in something, what is something that we can use that's going to have lasting impact? Right? Us as Respect Group invested in that film. We paid for that film to get done. And we felt that that was a tool that we could use to have long-lasting impact around these issues for people to use. It's available online for anybody. It's available in the U.S. The Child Help USA bought it. They're using it in educating in schools. Steve Walters and his group used it. They screened it over there in the UK. But we felt it was a tool that we could help connect the dots and paint the picture for people and organizations.
Yeah, it's certainly eye-opening just to sit here and watch that and see the two people who are involved in what they went through and what you went through and how the similarities of experiences is so wide-reaching in some ways. I just want to take you back to 1998 for a second and talk a little bit about what you did then and what you've seen, what he did then being the inline skate across the country, and talk a little bit about what the improvements you've seen since that time and since you've come out and spoke. I mean, it's been 20 years. Have there been improvements in this area?
Well, for sure. And like 1998, I had a nice mullet and no glasses. Now I got glasses, gray hair, limp.
Do you like the hair?
But no, we've seen a lot of change, and I mean, frick. Like we used to have have the conversation outside of town, right? That was the reality, and we look at where we're at today, and you look at the leadership Ontario Soccer showing, and all the clubs here, and Soccer Canada, and Hockey Canada, and Gymnastics Canada, and so we've come a long ways, and I don't think that we're reading these stories by coincidence. There's been a lot of we've been at this for 20 years. Not just here in Canada, but in the U.S. as well. And we were down at the USOC, I think it was 10 or 11 years ago. And so, it's people are feeling more comfortable to talk about this stuff. And hence the reason why I think, what happened and what it was back then was the conversation was, oh, that's a hockey issue, and that's an isolated case. And I think that we realize this is not a sport issue. This is a societal issue. But yet I look at sport. I had this conversation on the plane today. Brian Burke was flying down on the plane, and we were chatting about this with me today. And we look at sport, and we look at the gift of sport. I mean, what is one of the struggles that we deal with our young people today, right? Mental health, depression, anxiety. That's one of our biggest concerns with our young people and adults. Well, we also know that one of the best medicines for anxiety and depression is exercise, right? And sport. And we're not using it for that, right? We need to use it for that. I think sport is a tool for one of the biggest crises that we have on our hands with kids today. And I think that we need to look at it like that. And to look at it like that, I think we need to be able to understand exactly who's signing up, right? Who really is signing up. And I think if we know that, we can equip ourselves the best the best we can to make sure that we're using sport for what it is, and that is, I think, a safe place for kids to feel a part of and to feel better.
So the film talks a little bit about the Sheldon Kennedy Advocacy Center in Calgary. Tell us a little bit about that and what the hope and the goal is for that community, for that center, what its focus is, and if anything like that exists here in Ontario as well, if you could tell us a little bit more about sort of the resources that are available to us.
Sure. Well, I think the Kids Help Phone's here, who is a great resource. And
yeah, just for those who aren't aware, they're just outside, and they're the recipients of the donations that have been happening tonight. So we encourage you to check them out as well before you leave.
Yeah. And yeah, there's 32 child advocacy centers across the country now. A Boost here in Toronto, and the Marie Visson in Montreal, and Durham Region, and Barrie, and Aurelia. But basically, it's about early intervention prevention, right? If we know what we know today, if we know the outcome of kids that have been impacted, if we know they're the ones filling our streets, they're the ones filling our prisons, they're the ones dropping out of school, they're the ones filling our treatment centers, if we know that, right? And then we have them coming through our doors at a young age, at 5, 6, if we know they've been impacted this way, well, we better do a better job here, because we can't fiscally afford this, right? There was in Saskatchewan, we were doing work in Saskatchewan, 82% of their provincial budget, and I don't think it's different in any province we go to, but 80% of their provincial budget was spent on human services. They did a data and analytics survey around in their correction systems, and 78% of the individuals in the correction systems were identified within a government system before the age of 12. So to me, we can do a better job intervention if we know the potential of the path that they could be taking, and that's really what we're trying to do, is do a better job when these kids and families come through our doors. How do we do a better job at turning their life around here and getting them involved and back into the community?
We're talking a lot about the victims. One of the members in the audience would like us to talk a little bit about the families. In the documentary, they ask, the families struggle to find a way to support victims after the fact. Can you speak on how we can go about doing that? How can we support the families of these victims?
Well, I know my mom and my brother and my sister, we've done a lot of work together, but I think that we had to learn and understand that they were impacted too. They were just as manipulated as I was. I mean, Graham manipulated my mom and my brother to get access to Sheldon. And, and that's what we find is quite common. I think that, another thing is that we can't fix the individual, right? And I think we were talking to Graham there, and I can't fix Graham and Mickey and wave a wand and 2 counseling sessions and I'm going to fix them. I think it's got to be about acceptance and our willingness to do the work, right? That is what I think is the key, is that each individual has to get to the place where they're going to say, you know what, I'm going to do whatever it takes to feel better. Right? And things might be different, right? But I talked about it. We keep looking at outside sources to fix us because we don't feel well, right? Whereas a lot of this stuff, it's up to us to do what we have to do every day. Exercise is important for me. It's a priority. I know I have to do that. I know I need to check in on my emotional side. Lots. I know I need to, pay attention to my daughter and I's relationship, so I have to make that a priority, right? There's certain things that I have to make a priority in my life if I want it to be good. And I think that, recovery from this stuff or a family or is no different.
Just to bring it back to the film a little bit then, the film was named after the town of Swift Current. What was the reaction by the town?
Well, the film, we weren't supposed to name the film Swift Current.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was a placeholder. So they went to screen the film down, and because the filmmaker was the dean of filmmaking down in University of Southern Cal. And so he showed it to the students, and we had Swift Current up there as a placeholder. And one of the feedback came from the students was, we love the title, right? We love the title. Kids get abused, they get swept away by this swift current. Because they had no idea Swift Current was a town, right? Most people, you go, like, even I'm sure in Toronto, they wouldn't tell you that Swift Current's a town. So I didn't want it to be titled Swift Current, but I had to be convinced that, it was the right title. And we actually screened our film in Swift Current, and I felt that it was a very powerful night. We filled the theater, and I think it gave the town permission to forgive, but not forget. And they're doing some great stuff, and I think that's what, things like this happen. But it's what do we do with it, right? What do we do with it to make it better? So.
What have your takeaways been? So in watching that as well, when you're doing the skate, you said you were getting 20 people a day coming up to you and talking to you about abuse cases. Is that still the case? Do you still see that kind of level of people coming forward? And how unnerving was that for you at that time to have that such an exposure? I mean, you're dealing with your own issues at the time, and here you are being confronted with others, and you talk a little bit about it in the film. But was it startling to see that amount of people coming forward, and do you still see that today?
Well, I went from thinking I was the only one to all of that. I mean, I had no idea what to expect, but I used to carry it all with me. I used to take their stories with me and think I had to fix them, and that was a lot of weight to carry, and it killed me. And I realized today that the best gift that I can give others is to listen. I just need to listen, and if they need help, I need to be very clear where they can get that. And I can point them there, and I can get them there, but I can't fix them. I can't take away their pain. But I had to learn that, right? And yes, we still get a lot of disclosures today. And that's a good thing. And lots of times people just want to say, that happened to me, and they've dealt with it in their own way. Or, where can I get help? And I've learned a lot. I still need to make sure that I take care of myself, because if I don't take care of myself, then I'm no good for others. And and it's just, I don't really know what to say about that. I think that, what we've learned is that this is a lot bigger than what I ever thought it was. But I also know that there's hope, right? If I look at that movie, like the movie's really about hope. Like there's a lot of hope there, right?
Absolutely.
And, we do have a good chance to turn these kids' lives around. And, if we just are there, and we don't have to do anything special other than show up for them in the right way. So
it's a truly emotional film. I was choking up throughout, and I think a lot of people in the room were as well. If you could give a takeaway for our audience here today, a message of what you'd like to see them do with this knowledge, and showing this film to this room today, what are you hoping will happen?
Well, I mean, I think that, I hope that the film made the invisible visible. I hope that the film painted a picture of the reality of how kids struggle. It's not pull yourself up at the bootstraps and get over it. And I think what I would like to leave with is that I'd like to leave people with how important your role is of an administrator and a coach, or somebody that's, volunteering, or a referee or official, right? How important your role is. It's critical, right? It's absolutely critical, because the Sheldon Kennedys, the Mickeys, and the Grahams could be coming to sign up for soccer just to want to come and play soccer, right? And they're going to look to you, whether you're just there because you're the only parent that put their hand up or what, but they're going to look to you as, and you're there for the right reasons. You may be the only trusted adult in their life. And my question would be, if they disclose to you something that's going on, do you know what to do? Right? And I think that's a fair question. Right? And I think that if we can make sure that we understand the reality and accept the fact that there is going to be kids coming in onto our team that are probably going to be struggling in some way or another, and that we need to make sure that we understand that and prepare ourselves for that, right? And I think that that's probably the best gift we can give ourselves, you know, and not only the kids that are coming in there, and I think if you can, you know, look at that, you're going to help the good kids too.
It's an incredibly powerful film. Your experience has been transformative, and I think for us here today has been transformative in some ways. Please welcome, or please congratulate, or thank Sheldon Kennedy.
Thank you.